Hello and welcome to this new edition of the Paranormal Concept Show on the PA UK network. I'm your host Paul Rook, and today we are joined as always by the lovely Kerry Greenaway.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. And we are also joined in the studio by Richard Clements. Hello, Richard.
Hi there, guys. Can I go out now?
No.
Oh.
No, afraid not.
No, not for another 3 weeks.
It's about another 3 weeks, and then maybe. But doubtful, but maybe.
I know. I'm doing all right this end. Yeah,
Good.
Just ticking along.
Good.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? Just
I wouldn't normally ask what you've been up to, but I think the answer's going to be the same as last time, isn't it? Nothing.
Yeah. Just listen to the start of last week's show, and you'll probably get the gist of it.
Yeah,
Okay, so because obviously we can't do the normal what we've been up to, so let's just crack on with the show and get on with it.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So what are we talking about this week then?
Well, the last few weeks we've been talking about the concept of marketing and media hype, and how an urban legend or a ghost story can get taken and embellished and brought forward. And
absolutely.
That's sort of basically what the area we've sort of like talked about in the last couple of weeks. So I thought, we do get hauntings. There are hauntings that are out there. The ghost story, there's no smoke without fire, as one of my old friends used to say. And they are a thing. People do have experiences, don't they? They do have these.
It's alleged paranormal activity. We can't say they're hauntings because we don't actually know what what the ghost is supposed to be. There could be a logical explanation. We just haven't found it yet.
No, this is true, exactly. And a lot of it could just be, pareidolia. It could be how your eye is, looking at things in the dark. All sorts of reasons why. We don't know. But activity has been reported time and time again in many different forms. So we thought we'd actually break it down and actually put some good old human boxes on things.
Of course.
Okay, yeah.
Love a box, right? Gotta love a box.
Put them into boxes, label them, and file them for another day.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we thought we'd have a look at the different types of hauntings. Is what we're going to have a little look at today. Very, a whistle-stop tour before we delve a bit deeper into some of these in other shows. But we're going to give you a whistle-stop tour about some of the boxes of what paranormal activity could be classed as, I suppose.
Yes, I mean, they do seem to have been put into sort of categories and over the years. So yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so I've pulled out this first box. We can go through.
Oh God, yeah. Which one?
Box? What's in the box?
It's labelled poltergeist, so I'm assuming it's poltergeist stuff that's in it. But it keeps moving about
and making noises.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit of a lively box, this one. And a lot of hauntings could be classed as poltergeist because it does actually mean noisy ghost, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's the general consensus. Yeah.
Yes, a German word, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Now, the most famous one, I think we all know, is the Enfield haunting.
Yes.
You do surprise me.
I know. We love the bit of the Enfield haunting. Now, we all know the story of like a single parent, Peggy Hodgson, called the police to a rented home in Enfield, the Enfield haunting, it's otherwise known as. Absolutely fascinating case study. Now, this is probably the definitive poltergeist study case from the SPR, right? Society of Paranormal Research.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
In regards to from very early in the case to pretty much the end of the case. And if you've not read the book by Guy Leon Playfair, I suggest you do, because that gives you a complete understanding of what they did, what they didn't do. There's lots of the kids faked it, or didn't they fake it? Lots of stuff, a lot of controversy around this case, but it was...
See, not only was it a book, but it's also in a film, isn't it?
Oh,
wasn't it The Conjuring 2 and countless other versions of it as well?
Yeah, there was a mini series actually, a three-parter, I believe it was, a mini series,
Uh,
which kind of was closest to the events. There was
mhm.
still a little bit of artistic license in there, but it was a pretty good version, I suppose you would
Yeah.
call it. But if you do want the definitive understanding, then definitely check out Guy's book himself, because obviously he was the one that was very involved in the case,
Hmm.
to really get to grips with all the ins and outs of the case. And I do believe, and I can't remember who wrote it, but all the tapings they did, all the, they taped everything when they were there. There was lots of stuff that was irrelevant, like normal conversations, but they caught a lot of the activity on tape. And a lot of that tape has now been transcribed, and that's actually a book out there, but I can't remember the name and I can't remember the author. Should have checked that out, really. But I know it's
Yeah,
only
that
just been released.
yeah, it's actually and just been released. I think it's under the guise of the SPR, but don't take my word on that. But yeah,
One thing I would like to do is get my grubby little mitts on the archives
Mm.
of this case.
yes, that would be quite a afternoon spent, I should imagine, and going through those.
Just an afternoon, Richard.
Well, yeah,
Now, it hit the media, and that's really where everybody first heard about this case, was when a newspaper reporter went in and actually witnessed activity for himself. Police witnessed activity and couldn't explain it. They saw a chair moving across the floor. And that's sort of how the SPR found out about it and ended up being involved in it. All sorts of activity took place on this one, from levitations, things moving in the house, even mini fires like matchbox would go on fire, not massive fires. We'll talk about that bit in a minute with something
hmm
else. There was, oh gosh, going through walls, A-ports, strange voices, knockings, all sorts of activity was down to this alleged ghost. Very, very interesting case if you don't know about this. And we're not going to
I've,
go
I've
into...
just I've just found information about that book.
Ah,
It's called The Enfield Poltergeist Tapes, one of the most disturbing cases in history and what really happened, by Dr. Melvin J. Willing.
yes. Definitely go check that out.
That's the one. It is on Amazon and various other bookshops online.
Yeah, he transcribed the tape. He went through hours and
Yeah.
hours of tapes to transcribe. Brilliant, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But this is like the typical poltergeist activity, what you would expect. But I would say this is high end.
Yeah.
well,
Absolutely.
certainly. I mean, it is what you speak to anyone about poltergeist and activity, and this one will be possibly at the top of everyone's list. I mean, it's been well documented, and as you say, the books, and it's even been portrayed in sort of films and television. So yeah, the poltergeist haunting, I should imagine a lot of people would actually know about.
It is definitely one of these go-to cases, and when people do say poltergeist cases, that is normally amongst the top two that people can come out with.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Guy Leon Playfair himself was actually quite an authority in regards to investigating poltergeist phenomena in his own right. He had done a lot of work over in South America prior to this case. So when he got called in, when he offered his help to Maurice Grosse, who actually was the one who took on the case originally, and
Yeah.
then Guy came in later. Um, the understanding is poltergeist generally starts and stops quite quickly. It generally always occurs at night or in the presence of a certain person. A lot of people have said young children, haven't they?
Yes, I
Yeah, yeah.
mean,
It does tend to be young women, doesn't it? Like in teens.
yeah, sort of girls going through puberty, and it does seem to be a common thread and throughout most sort of poltergeist hauntings, and it's certainly something investigators will sort of look for first if these sorts of activity are reported.
Well, the work I've looked at with poltergeist, it just seemed to have that factor, but it does also sort of have, it's not predominantly female. There is always a male involved as well, so it tends to need that balance of masculine and feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always young children. Sometimes it's the older ladies of a certain age as well. So it does seem to be that
Yes.
transitional stage of the female point, but there will always be a male involved as well, as in not necessarily in a sexual way. I'm not talking about a relationship. I'm talking about in the environment, like, so, like, for example, in this one, they had Janet, Margaret, Johnny and Billy
Mm-hmm.
was involved in that case, in that house, and the mother was of a certain age as well. When you look at 30 East Drive, you had the boy and the girl, Philip, and can't remember her name. Anyway,
No.
there was a boy and a girl in there as well. And actually, when you start reading out other cases, older cases, they do tend to be, tends to be that factor. Now, what's sort of been put forward is that it's like an uncontrolled psychokinesis. So basically, like, the people are creating it or putting
Yeah.
out the energy for something else to use to create it, because there's still that we don't know. We don't know if it's them creating it or whether or not, as Guy Leon Playfair says, it's like you put out a ball of energy and then your local elemental or sprite or whatever comes along and goes, oh, nice big ball of energy, I'm going to play with that. And then it stops just as quickly as it starts. So it does need that agent or a focus. It definitely needs that. Yeah. But whether or not it is that person creating it or whether or not it is a spirit that's using that energy that's being expended, we don't know.
No, it's a very sort of difficult one to sort of like come to, but it seems to make sense. I mean, you look at the type of activity, which can be quite dramatic, and it does, and it is quite easy to associate it with an external, with the end result of an internal process being made external. Frustration, anger, or sort of, those sort of things people do experience, especially going through these particular age ranges we're talking about, children and women of a certain age.
Yeah.
It is interesting that it happens at that time, and emotionally, you are less likely to be able to control your emotions. So,
Yes.
if you're trying to suppress the strength of that emotion, that energy has to go somewhere. So, it does seem to be in these transitional phases of life. And boys, you do get puberty as well, which is why you can't discount the male side of it. It's very easy to
Absolutely. I mean,
jump to. Carry
there
on.
are cases as well just involving boys. I do believe that, I think, wasn't it the 30 East Drive case back in the 60s? It was centred around the grandmother and the young boy she was babysitting.
It started off, the very first encounter with that particular entity was the grandmother and the son, Philip. Not
Exactly.
the girl was
And
gone.
it was the boy that was in that stage of puberty.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the activity also happened when none of the children were there
Exactly.
either. But that case is very controversial in its own right because it wasn't researched in the way it should be. It's basically a local historian that had written it down. There's a couple of newspaper articles, and when I was looking into that, it got very sketchy, should we say, and it sounds very media sensationalised. And even some of the interviews with the people involved, it sounds like, do you remember when? Rather than it being
Yeah.
documented properly. So it is a very difficult one to pin down, that case.
Well, I mean, just using that as an example,
Yeah.
as a face value sort of thing at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's a good.
Well,
It is still one that we all know, and a huge paranormal investigation industry has built up around that case. Which we haven't got the chance to do with Enfield. One thing that is curious to me with these cases, people go, "I'd love to go and investigate the Enfield haunting house," which you can't do. I would just like to put that out there. It's you can't do that.
No.
But it's not open for investigation, and family lives there and have had no more trouble since back when it happened. But 30 East Drive you can. Now, people do report either having a very active night or a non-active night, which leads me to the assumption that poltergeists usually come and go very quickly. So if it was there, it's not going to be there now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, with poltergeist and activity, you are looking at sort of like a sort of, and possibly up to about an 18-month sort of time span. And this does seem to be pretty much the case in a lot of reported cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if people are getting activity in 30 East Drive now, it kind of makes you wonder if it's it's almost like a extended Philip experiment. Your belief in it is creating it rather than it actually being there still. So, you know.
I mean, there's definitely still other theories surrounding that, so.
Yeah, there are other theories on that one, definitely. But I wanted to bring another case to the table, which I'd read about, oh gosh, quite a few years ago now. And this kind of one, I wanted to bring this to the table because it's very relevant in today's media reporting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is about the case of the Cornetto di Caronia fires, and I'm not sure if I said that right. But it's basically...
We've got you on Italian today.
I've got Italian. I'm not very good with the Italian accent, though, is all I'm saying. Now, this is a small town in Sicily, over in Italy. Now, if you read the newspaper reports on this, gosh... This is a town-wide poltergeist going on. All sorts of weird stuff happened, but the main gist of it is this. Spontaneous fires would break out. Mm-hmm. Here, there and everywhere. And there's a whole conspiracy around this as well. It really is a whole bag of let's throw every part of the paranormal into this. But it started off basically with these spontaneous fires. And... That a lot of investigation went into this to try to resolve this, but just to give you an idea of how bad it allegedly got, and I'm going to use the word allegedly because we'll come on to that in a minute. Right, so boats, cables, beds, sofas, chairs, cookers, vacuum cleaners, TVs, refrigerators, washing machines, cables spontaneously caught fire. Glasses imploded. Aubergines were coloured like the rainbow. They had, apparently, unexplained magnetic field peaks detected. Oh, gosh. Compasses losing their orientation. Car alarms ringing with no reason. I mean, this poltergeist really ransacked this whole town. Deaths of animals from the ground and the set. Oh, it just goes on and on and on. There's about 350 different records about cases documented. Now, some of these were actually witnessed, not just by the people in the house, but by the military, journalists, policemen, etc., etc., etc. But I looked into this quite deeply because it seems too good to be true, right?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Well, you get something like this and you think, wow. And but sort of being in this sort of industry type thing, you do learn to sort of think if something sounds too good to be true.
It usually is.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, it was completely unexplained. They even evacuated the town. Now, bearing in mind, it sounds like, because, they evacuated the whole town. Small town. Yeah. You're not looking at hundreds and hundreds of people here. You're looking at a small amount of people. So when they evacuated the town to have a look, at the time, there was about 40-odd people. So that's how small we're talking.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the local priest and the press labelled it a poltergeist. The priest was actually an exorcist. He was, he did that. But you've got to look at the beliefs, the general population belief system, highly religious.
Highly religious, and particularly in Sicily, which is the island off the bottom of Italy as well. And sort of and priests and stuff do occupy quite a highly respected person in the community, so it probably they would have gone to him first and taken what he sort of said as the initial sort of explanation for what was going on.
Yeah, particularly when you've got
because priest said it's got to be a poltergeist. Yeah,
particularly when you've got no rational explanations coming out from other respected bodies like policemen and military and stuff like that. You know what I mean? They did a lot of work in this area to try to work out what it was. But this was back in 2004. Didn't last for a huge amount of time. Only lasted about a year. and then it stopped, and then they had a resurgence a few years later on this. So they, they couldn't explain it. Oh, the muscles woke up.
The paranormal pooch is here.
He's like, what? Anyway, an update. I found out this was basically a man has actually been arrested for fires, causing mysterious fires. Giuseppe Pizzino was actually arrested for allegedly starting the blazes. And a lot of when you really get to the people that actually went and investigated it and you read the reports and that, it is definitely not. You couldn't look at that and go paranormal. The only paranormal twist came from the priest originally, and then that was jumped on by the media. And the media are the one that drove the case to where it ended up being a big paranormal mystery conspiracy. Also, geologically, where this town is, it's set near Mount Etna and 2 other volcanoes. So they're saying it could be a combination of things. So you had these guys setting off spontaneous fires, but other things that were grouped as all part of the phenomena could actually be natural phenomena caused by the volcano underground kind of goings on.
Yeah.
Electromagnetic field fluctuations, all sorts of things that happen in a volcanic area could explain some of the other phenomena. But what has happened is they've grouped it all together and made 5 down to belief system. And this is where you have to be very careful. And this is the only reason I'm mentioning it under the poltergeist case scenario, is because it shows that you have to be very careful jumping to a paranormal assumption when there could be several different logical reasons separately. It just coincidental, I suppose, that it all happens around that sort of time.
Yeah, it certainly does, because sort of like just looking at the notes here, I mean, after the initial sort of poltergeist claims and the press, the Italian authorities did actually seem to put a lot of scientific research actually into this, or call in a lot of agencies to actually look. So they were obviously sort of like working along the premise that it was some sort of environmental problem that was happening. There was something in the environment that was actually causing this.
Yeah, but if you actually look at this, I say you'll be shocked at the amount of conspiracy theory. This even brought the ufology world into it. And, government conspiracy of a pulse, electromagnetic pulse weapon was being tested around that area. And so much, so much crap, basically, was attributed to some of the activity they had. But when you actually broke it down, add in media hype, I mean, God, a multicoloured rainbow aubergine? Really?
Well, yeah.
Unless I actually saw that with my own eyes, I don't believe that. I kind of don't believe it.
Aubergines do discolour. I know that. I used to...
Not into a rainbow.
Well, perhaps not, but they can discolour. But unless you actually saw a picture of it, the description may be totally different. I mean, you don't know, do you?
You don't know. Or it could have been, it wasn't rainbow coloured, it was multicoloured, as in different shades of aubergine, I don't know, you know what I mean? And the press have twisted it. It kind of really gives you that drive of how things got grouped together and false reported.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I actually wanted to, that's one of the things you actually have to be aware of in regards to reading a newspaper report about activity and the real story behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, it comes down to due diligence and stuff. And if you read something and just go on your gut feeling and think, well, this does sound a bit too good to be true. And as we said at the start of this sort of like an article, I mean, it probably is too good to be true,
But then you say that, maybe the SPR thought that about the Enfield haunting when it first hit their table. But,
True.
Really? I think the only reason they took it seriously because they had actually got a named police officer who was actually part of a press release video. You can they're out there to see. confirming that she witnessed what she witnessed.
Yeah.
And she can't explain it, which gave it more weight.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the people that have said, allegedly said this, allegedly said that in the fire case, it's just a policeman said.
And
There's no name.
And particularly if they're convicted an arsonist over the events that happened around that time, I mean, that's a big red herring as well.
Yeah, so you do have to be very careful when you are looking at some cases that hit the media for false reporting. But poltergeist haunting is a definite phenomena. It has been deeply researched by lots of different people. In fact, next week we're actually going to be speaking to somebody who's been researching the poltergeist phenomena in a lot more depth and has formed his own opinions of that. That's Mr. John Fraser. We're going to be speaking to him about his book that he's written purely about poltergeist. So let's leave poltergeist there and let's have a look at intelligent hauntings. Paul, do you want to lead on this one?
Have I got to put this poltergeist box away now?
Yeah, you need to get out the intelligent haunting box now, please.
Okay, right. Okay, let's just pull this one out.
It should have a brain on the top.
Oh, yeah, I found it.
Excellent.
I've got it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, brilliant. So we'll take this box out now. Okay, so basically, an intelligent haunting would be something, for example, like a spirit that you can interact with. Like allegedly, when people use Ouija boards, they're interacting with an intelligent spirit and that sort of thing. So again, something like in the story of the Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
Again, they brought forward these three ghosts, and they again were intelligent hauntings. So yeah, that's sort of what we're looking at now. So there you go, Kerry. There's the basics. That's sorted. Next.
Basically, you're getting a response, whether we Paul's named Ouija, but EVP response, or you ask them to do something and they do it. That kind of thing. Anything that is responsive to you and can interact with you as a person allegedly gives it intelligence.
Yeah, see, I have issues sometimes with these intelligent spirits because sometimes they're not that intelligent, and you're like, can you ask for, if your spirit is there, can you not knock on something, and it does the weakest tap you could ever find, you could imagine, and it's like your counterparts and that can move tables and stuff, and all you can do is tickle the sideboard.
Tickle the sideboard.
Surely there's something more that they could do, especially if they're in places where there's more than one spirit. You could just go, here, mate, come here, give me a hand.
So many assumptions in that statement alone.
Yeah. It's quite a broad sweep there, isn't it, Kerry?
Well, you never know, do you?
The intelligent hauntings tend to stick to a particular home or place of living place, or area of land, or an object which is slightly different. We'll come on to that in a bit. Or a person. They don't seem to go out. They seem to stick to an area, don't they? Intelligent hauntings. Which if they were intelligent, surely they wouldn't. It's kind of like my theory on that one, but
they would roam around a bit. But as you say, Kerry, it is very sort of localized. I mean, this is sort of what I should gauge. A lot of paranormal investigators actually go out to actually encounter, or they try to encounter, as opposed to the more benign, sort of like spirits that repeat themselves or stuff like that. I mean, it is the intelligent sort of hauntings that everyone seems to be particularly interested in and try to interact with on investigations.
Yeah.
I mean, are they localised though, really? I mean, you could go to somewhere like, for example, Epping Forest, and it was a royal forest at one point, and you would have had the kings and queens at the time riding through, hunting and stuff like that. But then you could go to, say, for example, the Tower of London and pick up the same spirit as what was in Epping Forest. Then they're not. I mean, okay, they're not miles apart, but there's still a good big distance between them.
Yeah, but we
It
really don't
doesn't,
know.
but it doesn't seem to be. That's the point, isn't it? That doesn't
Mm.
seem to be the thing. I mean, there is a theory that an intelligent haunting is tied to a place because of a reason. You know, there's
Yes.
this theory, isn't there, that it's like a traumatic death or a murder or an accident or, you know, something like emotionally traumatic ties them to a specific place, which is
Yeah.
why they haunt that particular place. But as we discussed in like the Gallows show or, you know, the Newgate prison show, if it was
Hmm.
that kind of emotion that tied you to a place, then you kind of would think there would be a lot more of that than there seems to be.
Mm.
You know, the other thing with this that occurred to me would be we looked into ages ago, we looked into, again, the theory is like the unfinished business thing. So that, you know,
Yeah.
because of a murder or something like that, or they're there to protect something. And in regards to protection, we couldn't actually find many cases of that. When we actually delved into it, the reasons were ownership, murder. It was always like the negative emotional set, not the love or the, you know, it wasn't something positive. I mean, oh, you know, there's theories, oh, that he's haunting it because he loved it so much. Really?
Mm.
That sort of theory, I think, sort of comes from it could possibly come from what we touched upon and last week with novels. That's more of a romantic, fictional sort of overlay on top of perhaps something that does actually happen, but they've given it a veneer of human touch to it, you know. So, you know, the romantic ghost comes back. I mean, you look at some of the classic works in literature, you know. Wuthering Heights is a classic example, you know, the ghost coming back, you know, of Cathy to search for Heathcliff. I mean, it certainly does have that. So I would imagine that that is more of an overlay on an underlying sort of
Yeah. I mean,
ghost phenomena.
you even had Ghost with Patrick Swayze. You know, that was sort of a lovey-dovey film, wasn't it?
Yeah. But like Richard said, it is an overlay. Now, if you look at it both
Mm.
ways, whether it's like the lovely, you know, romantic kind of overview, or it's the bad overview, it's
Yeah.
still a reality projection onto that situation because we don't know.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
even most intelligent haunting activity that you seem to get can only manage one or two words. And we kind of join dots. You know, what did you live here? Knock once for yes, twice for no, kind of thing. Oh, yep, you lived here. Do you know what I mean? That could possibly have a rational explanation. It could be coincidental that that's come up. Do you know what I mean? At that particular moment in time, who knows? You know, but this is basically, you know, a belief system that there are intelligent. This is all belief system. I get that. It's all belief system, and again, it's the mechanisms of if you were intelligent, why? Would you
Yeah.
haunt that particular place for that reason? And yes, you can look back in history and go, well, there was a murder here, so maybe that's why they're like, maybe it's an unsolved murder,
I
that's
think,
why
you know,
they're haunting.
if you do think that, I think there's a movie out there called The Others
Yeah,
that will just blow your mind.
yeah, I like that movie. That was a good
Yeah,
Yeah.
movie.
it's a good
Like,
film.
are we the actual ghosts, everybody? Are we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Although what Paul said to me last night about my dreams, I thought, God, if we're living when we're awake, we're actually living in a dream, and when we're dreaming, that's the reality. That's one screwed up world, is all I can say.
Yes. A weird conversation that one was.
Yeah.
Yeah. You haven't proved it yet. So.
but I still think, you know, sort of like we assume that that either something tragic happened or they're coming back to protect someone. But I think that comes a lot more from us, our sort of thinking and our way to try and rationalise it. I mean, what triggers this could be something totally different. We just don't know.
But again, we're just talking all on theories and boxes that humans have put on these types of phenomena. You
Yeah.
know, one thing I have to say is very rarely, even with poltergeist, the one and intelligent, one thing comes out very clear is if they were intelligent, and they've got this energy to communicate. and I say this goes from both sides, both poltergeist and intelligent. They don't seem to hurt with the capacity that they seem to be able to. They can throw a chair across the room, but it very rarely hits somebody.
Well, yeah, there is sort of classic, yeah. And again, I've sort of read reports with poltergeist activity in particular. If an object moves, it's very rare, if at all reported, you actually see the object move from situ. You will notice the result of the object being thrown. I mean, that seems to be very common. It will come past you or land by you. You won't actually see the glass ornament on the mantelpiece actually move from there. It seems that you're diverted with doing something, and then that will smash on just by your feet.
But it wouldn't actually
I
hit
mean,
you.
again,
No.
you see that at one of these other famous locations in the UK. I do believe they have pennies thrown at them,
Oh,
but they seem to have come through the wall.
cool. Is that Woodchester?
No, it's the one we mentioned earlier, East Drive.
Yeah, I've heard sort of pennies and Lego bricks. I think that might have been Enfield and marbles as well.
Yeah,
Which,
that seems to be I mean, and stones as well occasionally in certain locations. It's like whoever's there and experiences it claim that they come through the wall. There's no other explanation of where they've come from,
Yeah.
and no one actually witnesses that happening. They always, as Richard said, they're always focused on where it's landed. And no one's ever witnessed it coming through the wall. So I very much doubt that it did.
Well, whatever an intelligent haunting could be, there is this belief system that it's there to warn you of danger or help you in some form or give you an idea that they are there and maybe you can help them to move on. So that intelligent haunting is kind of like Richard said, it does seem to be what we all want. We all go out, ask questions and, with our voice recorders and hopefully get a response, from that. And that does tend to be what investigators seem to be after. Now, there's another form of haunting, which is just a residual haunting. Now, this is just an imprint, basically. You wouldn't be able to interact with it.
Isn't it a residual haunting, not a residue haunting?
Residual. Did I say residual or residual?
I thought you said residue.
Residual.
Is-
Residual.
Residual.
You're having a go at my bloody pronunciation again.
He's been very pernickety today, isn't he?
He is. Maybe he needs a nap. Maybe.
I would say that he probably needs to go out, but
yeah, maybe he's getting a little bit like stir crazy over there. Whichever way you'd like to say it, this is the one that's imprinted on the environment.
And these sorts of hauntings are tended to be sort of like associated with the traumatic event, aren't they? I mean, that people actually sort of believe that can imprint themselves on the immediate environment around where these events actually occur.
Yeah, but it's like a cycle. It's like people witness the same thing in the same place at not necessarily the same time, but the same type of event happens each time, the same appearance. The white lady comes under this, I saw a white lady on the parapet or whatever, or walking across the field. Everyone's reporting the same thing, but when they investigate, there's nothing but we've had reports of this apparition or activity.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, they call this sort of thing the stone tape theory, and they're basically saying that the walls are absorbing the emotion or the motion of what actually happened in the stone walls, and it sort of replays it over again. But I know, Kerry, you don't really go in for this stone tape theory and think it's.
I don't believe you've got to look at the mechanics of that. That's my perspective on stone tape.
I do think though that again it depends on what the walls are made of, or it could also be we've got a lot of natural. We've got like woods and things like that. in the house as well, and that they were all living at one point, and maybe their vibrations record it as well. So not just stone can record things, but other natural resources,
I've always
and
said though, I've always
maybe like a combination
yes.
that sort of helps.
But you have to look at the mechanics of how something gets recorded and then how something can get played back. And
Because I know
storage
you've
of
looked at
that
that.
as well. I've looked into this, or it's an ongoing research that I dip in and out of over years. Is the mechanics of that? It's all well and good saying, yeah, well, it's the crystal in the rock that records it. Does it? All right.
Yeah.
Well, what was the mechanism that allowed that recording, and then what triggered the replay? You've got to look at those factors. It's
But
very
then you
easy to
don't know,
blanket.
is there crystal in your wall? It might just be a concrete mix.
Quite
It might be
possibly.
chipboard. Do you know? It could be anything. You'd need to look at that and maybe look at the ground as well, and maybe see what other natural resources are in your walls or your
On the
windows and things. Do you know
land,
what I mean? And
yeah.
maybe, yeah,
I
it's a
personally
combination.
I personally don't think the stone tape theory has stood the test of time. I believe it had its place when it first came out because it was quite sort of oh yeah, perhaps this is it. But people have sort of looked at this, and yourself, and as you say, Kerry, you've looked at this, and it seems to produce more questions than it does answers. I mean, because you've got people now saying, well, it's a whole factor of things that can trigger it. Well, yes, it probably would, and it would have to be a very complicated set of factors to actually trigger something like this. And where do you start? I mean, people sort of say, well, it's to do with sunspots or atmospheric conditions. I mean, it seems to be you have to be very precise to actually get this effect.
It could be. It could. The vibrations, everything could be stored in the natural resources in the room, and then when there's a particularly bad sun day or something, when they've got when they fly out the flares and the radiation, and I don't know, it might increase the speed of the tachyons, and it might be the tachyons that trigger it.
What's a tachyon?
Is that something from Doctor Who?
No, 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 no. It's a very small. I don't know what way to describe it. It's like an atom, basically, and it will literally travel through everything.
Oh,
Right.
And tachyons come. I assume tachyons come from the sun, and they just spill out all over the place, and the planet's bombarded with them constantly, and it will travel through everything.
Oh, I'll have to look up and see if they've got an app on that.
Tachyons, look tachyons up.
yeah, I'll have to have a look into that. Does this buy into the quantum physics?
They've done a lot of research with tachyons and in that hadron collider.
All right.
Oh,
okay.
what, the Hadron Collider at CERN?
Yeah, and because they discovered the God
Particle.
particle as well.
Yeah.
So again, that could have some. I mean, I don't know too much about it, that particular particle, but the tachyon is another particle. So it might be worth looking into those as well.
Oh,
Just saying.
wow. I'm impressed, is all I can say on that one. I've not heard of that term before. So,
What did I learn today?
tachyons, yeah.
Tachyons. Yeah.
There is a quantum physics related theory on the stone tape theory that explains energy as particles of light that are dormant until they are stimulated by an outside variable under the proper conditions.
Possibly like a tachyon.
Possibly like a tachyon. Who knows, right, everybody? We're going to have
Well,
a
there you
little
go. We've
look.
debunked that. We've
Not
done that.
necessarily, not necessarily. But I do think I wouldn't dismiss it, but I would say it would be very complicated to explain the mechanics of a stone tape theory. And that's the point with that one. But to give you an idea of a case of residual hauntings, I looked at the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. Very famous photograph, everybody. Very famous photograph. The whole backstory, again, we've got a lovely little history of a wife committed adultery. Her husband was like violent temper, locked her up, died blah, 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 blah. But her ghost has been seen like loads of times around Christmas. She likes a little bit of a Christmas fest,
Now,
does the
Oh,
brown
well,
is
lady.
she the ghost of Christmas past, present?
oh, she must like the eggnog. She probably comes out for the eggnog.
Maybe
Yeah,
she
that's got to be.
does.
Or she's coming out for Santa.
Yeah.
Maybe she
Yeah.
does. But there's a very famous photograph of the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. I think it's one that if you're into the paranormal, you would know. She's on the staircase. You know, that lovely wispy figure on the staircase. But now they've looked at it and they think it's a double exposure. So it's not actually, they think it's a hoax, the photograph.
Yeah,
now.
sort of more than likely. Yeah, it is a hoax. I'm
But-
sorry to disappoint.
Well, that photograph is, but it doesn't change the fact that people have seen the Brown Lady plenty of times over the years. And actually, when I spoke to Raynham Hall a few years back, they wouldn't discuss. We don't talk about it. We don't discuss it.
But they actually said that to you.
Yeah, I actually spoke to the lady of the hall at the time, and she
So,
was
I
like,
mean, that's one of the pictures that did interest me years ago as a child, and that's sort of how I got into the paranormal. Um, but yeah, I mean, I never thought she was a brown lady. She looked rather white to me.
in the photograph, she looked very white, didn't she? But I think other
Yeah.
people have like put it down to how it's appeared to them.
Mm,
But she always, her face is very iconic for people. She's got
yeah,
very
it is.
empty eye sockets.
I must admit, I do think it could have been some sort of light reflection because there is off to the side. I mean, I don't know how they took the photograph. They might have used the flash,
Mm.
and it could have bounced back because it does look like it's that come off the woodwork.
Well, the photograph was actually taken for a magazine article in the 1930s for
Yeah.
Country Life, I believe, or magazine and like that. I mean,
But
and
photography has just sort of come in, and they wouldn't have very many examples of that
but
sort
the
of phenomena happening.
but
So I do
the
think it could be just a light reflection back.
But the backstory is that photograph was taken after they actually saw it descending the stairs. They actually were witnessing what the photograph actually, so they pointed the camera and shot, and that is what allegedly the photograph they took. But
So they're saying they actually see that coming down the stairs.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
She has been
Uh,
witnessed a lot. There are
What
cases. And,
what camera did they use? Was it one of those box cameras or
yeah.
something? The ones that took
Yes,
24
a knife.
hours
Well,
to set up.
no, it would have been sort of. It's a magazine article, so I should imagine at the time a good 1930s type camera, whatever they would have used. Yeah,
So what?
portrait
Yeah, but
camera.
what is it? One of those ones like the big box? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't. I'm
It's a
not
box
into
on a
cameras, so
tripod.
it's a big box on the
Yeah,
tripod.
where you've got a
And
plate that sits inside it.
yeah, and then he's got the cover to go over his head, sort of thing.
I don't believe it was a cover over his head. I think it was just like a click
Right,
remote.
okay.
Like,
Yeah.
So the flash would literally be a bit of gun pad or something.
No, that's a bit earlier, Paul.
Oh,
But
right, okay.
we're talking
What
the
sort of flash would
1930s
they
here.
used?
yeah, it's not quite that old a camera, but it is. So the photograph itself is generally now considered to be a double exposure.
Yeah,
On the
I wouldn't.
plate.
Because I mean, it would have taken a little bit of time to set that up, and if they got this ghost walking down the stairs, you would have thought by the time they got the camera set up and everything, the ghost has made a sandwich in the kitchen by then.
She's like, "Come
Well,
on, I'm waiting
so-
for my photograph."
But you look at the original
Flicking
photo.
his fingers are going, "Come on, make up, make up."
But you look at the original photo; it is perfectly framed as well,
Yeah.
which gives it a bit of suspicion behind it. You
Yeah.
know?
But it doesn't change the fact that the apparition or the figure has been seen time and time again on the staircase. So it's not that
Yeah.
they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. That is where she's seen, and she's been seen a lot. I mean, staff have left the hall before now because they've seen her and it scared them. Lots of recorded claims of seeing this. And we're not talking like we're talking lords and ladies and people like that who have witnessed this and seen it. Seen her. We'll say her. So they've not just gone on the off chance. The fact that something is occurring that's unusual, just because that photograph is fake, doesn't mean that the haunting is fake. Do you know what I mean?
No.
But
Right
unless
there.
you was able to get in there and do an extended investigation yourself, you're not going to be able to ascertain what that is. And also, with residual hauntings, it's whenever. It's not got a set time, a set date, it's just, it seems to happen. So again, could it be a trigger that it's there but not there? You're externalizing something that's triggered in your head.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That
I
is
don't know.
certainly
Yeah.
something I'd lean towards. It certainly, because the only thing we know about sort of people that actually see apparitions, the only common factor is the observer. So there has to be some mechanism going on with yourself.
So I think as well that just the mere fact that they don't want it investigated or they won't talk about it, does that mean? I mean, it depends on what their motivation is. But, do they actually know what it is and they don't want people to find out the truth?
Or maybe they're just private.
They're just
Well,
private.
exactly. That's what I mean. You have to find out what their motivation is. Because, I mean, I know we done, I've done an investigation quite recently, towards the end of last year, and we got some really good activity. And the fact that we're not allowed to go back to investigate it because, we was given the runaround and, he doesn't want to investigate it. It's almost like, do you really know what you was, maybe, you could be faking it then? But it's something that it just goes on in your mind. Do you know what I mean? It's nothing that I can prove because I can't get back there to investigate it. But then why won't you let me back there? And it's just one of these things that you think of. But again, you've got to look at the motive for why they won't let you there.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I think with this residual haunting, because it might not happen like every 5 minutes. It could happen once every 10 years or something, you know what I mean? Or very, very rarely. So to then have a team go in to investigate that properly may feel a bit, well, it doesn't happen very often, so it's not really an issue and we're not that bothered because, I mean, the lady herself, she wasn't very forthcoming in conversation. I will say that she was very, no, don't discuss it. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Kind of conversation was what it was. But if she's never witnessed it, she might be putting it down to it's just a folklore story. It's just something that happened years ago. I've never witnessed it, so it doesn't happen. So there's no point a team coming in to look at it, and because nobody's been bothered by it.
It would be nice if she maybe approached someone like the SPR or the Ghost Club or ASSAP or someone like that who's based on the scientific and they can research into the photograph. They could look at the properties. They could do. There's loads of different things that they could investigate.
But it's all very different. Don't forget, though, this is, Raynham Hall has been there for like years and years and years. So you've got different family at different times. When the photograph was taken, maybe that bit of the family was quite open to having it looked into, which is hence why we've got a photograph, because that is why they were there, whereas the people that are now, the ownership has now passed to this branch of the family. If they've never witnessed it, it might be all like just a family tale. Do you know what I mean? So you can't say it was faked or anything else like that.
It's still something that it still would be interesting to look into, even if it is just a family folk tale. Then you're looking at it from a historical point of view, and they could conclude from that okay, it's just a story.
But places like Raynham Hall, but their motivations. I mean, it's probably a commercial property now. It's an historic building, and their focus is on day trips. Open during the day and just have sort of visitors around and stuff like that, and that's all they want to do. I mean,
but a ghost story won't hurt anybody, will it? I mean, look at the Tower of London. thousands of people turn up to that daily, and look how many ghost stories are attached to that.
Yeah, but they won't
Even
let you
draws-
investigate it, though, will they?
No, they don't let you investigate it because people already live there.
Yeah, it's an
But
historic monument.
well, no, I mean, I'm sure that there have been people that have investigated it because I know someone that's done it. Um,
Yeah,
but they won't let you in because it's still a residential place for people.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Um, that's their explanation for it, and I can understand that. But there's so many ghost stories there; it even draws more people in because of the stories.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
does tend to be like the top 10 places. If you say to people, where if you could investigate anywhere in the world, where would it be? Tower of London is always up there, right?
Absolutely,
Oh,
and
yeah.
just so happens that I've done a blog on the ghosts of Tower of London, and
Funny
it's in
that.
the on the
Never.
website.
And
Yeah,
where will people?
paranormalconcept.com. So if anyone wants to go back and have a look at the blog page, it's Tower of London there.
Okay.
Oh, brilliant.
I love it.
Nice little plug. Yeah.
But when you
Have
talked
we?
about a ghost story as being, you know, used to somebody's advantage, there is a theory that the brown lady has been used by smugglers to keep people away from that area.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Yes.
that's another possibility. But then, if someone was to look into the history, and they could turn out and say, well, okay, at the time the house belonged to so and so, and he was a bit of a rogue, he was a trickster, he loved all that sort of stuff. Maybe we can't say for sure, but maybe he did set it up, and that's where your legend began, sort of thing. Or he was a dodgy smuggler, and
But the thing
you
is,
know.
Paul, you can actually do this. You don't actually sort of have to have full access to the actual buildings and stuff you go to. I mean, sort of
Yeah, but I like
archives
to
and
be
stuff.
nosy.
I know you like to be nosy. You can research these cases, as Richard says. You don't have to visit a location to research a location, particularly with cases that have got a long, extended history of hauntings. You've only got to, I say only got to, it's quite a mammoth task, but trawl through and find people, like particularly with Rainer Hall, it goes over years. It doesn't just go over like one. It's not like a one-off. It tends to, a residual haunting would be something that multiple people over multiple time period have witnessed time and time again, but follows the same remit, as it
Yeah,
were.
I know what you're saying, but I'd still like to go to the location, especially like if I've done some research on it and found smuggler tunnels underneath, and I could say things like, it's behind that wall. Can we knock that one down?
Yeah, but this is why you're not allowed into locations. You start
This
wanting
is
to
why, yeah,
rearrange the
you don't
location.
get in anywhere.
And then actually, going back to Poltergeist, sorry to bring that box back out again, but,
Oh, I've just put
again,
that away.
yeah, I know, sorry. But it's been, like, again, it's been reported that you start doing renovations on a property and it tends to
Yeah.
kick off activity. Particularly older locations this is. I don't think
Mm.
that goes down to your 1970s semi, you know what I mean? But old locations does tend to have that, mythology that if you start doing any works to the place, then activity seems to kick off. Because they don't
Mm.
like it, spirits, apparently, if you do that. But
Oh, if you move stuff around, yeah.
yeah, but that would go under poltergeist or intelligent haunting, not residual haunting. So
Yeah.
you've got to start looking at it, but it's all very strange, isn't it, when you start trying to put something in a box
Yeah.
and
Mm.
personal experience. I mean, we've talked about Whitney. I'll go quickly because we're running out of time in our first half of the show. We know how unreliable witness statements are. They think they've seen something or walked along, particularly pre-electricity. They're walking around with candles, for goodness sakes, for
Well,
light,
yeah.
and then they see something and it scares the bejesus out of them. And, then all of a sudden we've got a witness account of, a personal encounter with an alleged entity. Kind of like that in itself kind of throws up red flags and questions.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and particularly when you are examining stories from sort of like the Victorian era and stuff like that, because the environment these properties were in were probably a lot different from what they are today. So they're probably more forested, more wooded and stuff, and there would have been a lot more sort of the areas would have been quieter. So there could have been a lot more stuff that could have been mistaken for supposed supernatural occurrences.
And yet we're still out there hunting for those supernatural occurrences even to this day in old buildings. So, you know, it's one of those. Anyway, we have actually come to the end of the first half of the show. We're going to take a quick break. Join
I'll
us.
put these boxes away.
Put those boxes away because we're going to get out a load of other ones. A load of other ones. That was good grammar, wasn't it? After the break. And enjoy is all I can say. We'll be right back.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Now, before the break, we looked at poltergeist, we looked at intelligent hauntings, and we looked at all sorts of cases linked with that. But we're going to get the next box out. What box have you got there, Paul?
Yeah, the next box. I'll put all the other boxes away now, so we won't go back over those. The next box we've got is the reoccurring hauntings. So I'm going to pass that over to Richard to delve into, I think.
Right, let's have a look in here now. Interesting.
I bet it's stuff you've all seen before, isn't it?
Yeah, I always thought, deja vu. Right, reoccurring. Oh, you got me going now. Reoccurring hauntings actually appear to be actually quite similar to the residual hauntings you actually get out there, but the reoccurring hauntings are more associated with events that have happened at a set point in time and are sort of like alleged to actually reoccur, usually perhaps on a certain date. And these are usually sort of connected to historic events, and quite usually battles usually come up in this, sort of phantom battles which reoccur on the dates of the said battle. And one battle of interest here is actually the Battle of Hastings, which is said to have a knight on horseback that appears on the anniversary of the battle. Now, I've actually been to Battle Abbey where the actual battle took place, and the basic sort of battle was sort of Harold came down from the north of England to fend off the invasion of the Normans down just outside of Hastings, and when they actually arrived at the battlefield, the Saxons actually did set up in quite a prepared position on top of a hill, and the Normans were actually at the base, and by any stretch of the imaginations, the Saxons actually should have won this. Are you all right, Kerry?
I'm having a giggle because this is like right up your alley, this, isn't it? Carry on.
Carry on. Okay. Yeah, and well, basically, throughout the day, the Normans were like sort of advancing slightly up the hill, but the Saxons were actually holding their position and not sort of actually coming down to meet them. So what the Normans actually done was actually use their archers and they fired in the air. So they were firing lobbing shots into the Saxon enclosure. And from this is where perhaps the story of King Harold getting the arrow in the eye comes from. But this is probably not true. But this did actually affect the outcome of the battle because they were starting to make casualties on the Saxons.
You know why they really won, don't you?
Like that.
Because they had their Weetabix.
Dear me. And that's another story, listeners.
Oh, Paul, tell them the side story to that, please.
Okay. The side story is our very own Richard Clements years ago happened to be an extra in an advert for Weetabix. And it was the one where you had all the soldiers and they're like, they had their Weetabix. they've had their Weetabix. Oh my God, they've had their Weetabix and run away. And Richard was one of the extras in that. So I can't explain that joke.
Many moons ago that was. And right, where was I? Yes. And well, to cut a long story short, I'm not going to babble on anymore because now everyone knows about my acting prowess. It's a bit embarrassing. But the Normans actually had cavalry, which was pretty new on the battlefield back in 1066, and the Saxons weren't actually used to it. So the Normans actually went up to engage in the Saxon wall and actually retreated. And this was a feint retreat. The Saxons actually followed them down, allowing the cavalry to get round the side and actually totally encircle the Saxon hordes, and they actually put most of them to the sword, including poor King Harold, who was more than likely was killed by a cavalryman. And that is the basic story behind that. But he was sort of just slain, and that was that. But it's stories like this that actually sort of people sort of will actually sort of go to these places on the anniversaries of these battles, and there are certain battles, Edge Hill, which is an English Civil War battle, and I believe Culloden as well in Scotland is also another one which is believed to have reoccurring hauntings. But there is a problem with this, I actually feel, and it's an old one I always like to bring up, is if they do reoccur on the anniversary, which is all well and good up until about the 1772, when they actually changed the calendar. And if these battles are still reoccurring on the date, they are 12 days out.
12 days, everybody. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Interesting concept, though. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know whether you have any thoughts on sort of that, or sort of reoccurring hauntings in general, and what your
my thought on this would be sort of not hauntings as such, but more to do with time,
like a time slip,
like a time slip, or a fracture in time, so you can like glimpse through and see little snippets of the battle.
Yeah, I would sort of go along that sort of thing, but I wouldn't actually put it down to the actual date. I think the dates are sort of in the history books, and that's sort of what people sort of tend to sort of relate to. But if there are apparitions appearing on these sites, they could appear all year round, I would say, if they are sort of trapped in the residual type.
I mean, there are theories that time happens all at the same time, and it's not linear as most people believe. If that's the case, then yeah, as you said, it's a case of, you know, it could happen any time, and these fractures or openings in time, and you can see through, would happen any time.
Yeah, there's also that, and again, after these battles were fought, there was a lot of sort of propaganda sort of influence to actually say these battles were being refought for whatever reason. It was usually for political reasons. I mean, this is particularly shows up in the Phantom Battle of Edge Hill, which is quite a famous one, and everyone will recite this one in the paranormal community, but it's actually not true. It's actually been taken back to a couple of broadside ballads, which were sort of propaganda broadsheets of their day. And again, we see the authors of the time were overlaying fictitious events on real timelines. This is where a lot of the confusion comes from.
Wow. Okay. There we go, everybody. The other thing I would like to say
what you're
about
saying
this
is the whole series of Blackadder's fictitious.
Yes, probably.
Yeah, well,
because that started obviously at the Battle of Bosworth Field.
Yes.
Well, what I'd like to say about this one is there's a lot of reported recurring hauntings at Gettysburg in America, right?
Yes.
Now, a lot of people put these down to this stone tape theory that we discussed before on residual. But the recording element a lot of people cite is quartz. But in that case in Gettysburg, it's got like no quartz in the area.
Oh,
Okay.
right, yeah.
But there
There is
is
a
a theory that it could be silica that is the
Mm.
recording element. But that would obviously need a lot more research. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that little point up as well.
What
Really?
silica?
Also,
What
also,
silica?
in the first half of the show, I mentioned about tachyons, didn't I?
Yes, you
The
did.
Rileys.
Yes.
I have looked into it over the break and stuff, and basically, it's not tachyons, it's neutrinos that I was thinking of.
Oh, another term I've not
Ah,
heard of.
that's right.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Oh, the
we'll
old
have to look
tachyons
into
and
that one.
neutrinos, Richard, eh?
Yes, we've got it all.
Yeah.
Mm. So this, what you said before about the Gettysburg and the you say quartz. There's no quartz, but you said what was the other element you said, Kerry?
Silica.
Would there be silica in granite?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the Gettysburg escarpment is actually built on a granite escarpment.
Yeah, silica is like the most prominent element around the globe,
Mm-hmm.
more so than quartz. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So everyone goes, oh, it's quartz because quartz is like everywhere, which it generally is, but not as much as silica. And silica is a natural element of quartz. So when they started looking at it, they started thinking what element is more abundant in a lot more other elements as part of another kind of element, as it were, or another mineral. And it was silica that came out top of the list. So the theory of quartz being the main recording element is not really accurate. It's actually the silica that is part of it. So,
Do you,
but
would
again,
you
there's no
feel that
proof.
idea comes from sort of like the spiritual connection that people have with quartz?
Yeah, probably. And because they
Yeah,
know that
those.
quartz is a recording element used in modern technology as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's used on circuit boards and TVs and all sorts of things. Quartz gets used for. It's well known for that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's an assumption people made. They jumped on that. Well, if it's able to store data on computers and stuff like that, why can't they? Why couldn't it in nature record something?
Yeah.
So I can understand their reasoning, but they're forgetting the process to store the data.
Yeah.
It doesn't just automatically store data. There's a
I
process
think
that makes it store the data onto the quartz. So you've got to then explain how in nature that process takes place
I
before
think
you
we'd have to
can.
look into that. I think we'd have to look into that and maybe do when the new Ghostbusters movie comes out, we could relive our old show on is it possible to catch a ghost?
Well, there you go.
Yeah, because we did come up with some interesting theories on that, didn't we, of whether or not it
Yeah,
would
but
be
that was on our
possible.
old network, so that's something
Yeah,
that we could look into again and take into account, you know, what you've just discussed. Because
yeah.
if it is possible for something like that to hold on to like a recording of some sort, then could it actually be feasible and possible to catch a ghost as well? But that's maybe, yeah, I think we should look into that on the
Yeah.
Ghostbusters. So.
Oh,
Oh, right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Oh,
Ghostbusters, unfortunately, I'm not in that movie, so that's not
no.
part of my sort of
No, no,
resume of acting experience.
yeah. So we'll relive that subject.
Okay, well, we'll go back to that one because we've learnt a lot more since then as well. So
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
may well be able to throw out some interesting concepts and ideas for people. Anyway, moving on, time to put the reoccurring hauntings box away, I feel.
Oh, I've just got that out.
I know. I'm a girl.
I
You
wish
have
you'd
to.
make your mind up.
I'm a girl. What can I
It's a
say?
girly thing,
We're
yeah.
moving on quickly today.
Okay, so what are we doing now?
So pull out the historical hauntings box.
Oh, that's right at the top. I've got to get the ladder out now. Oh dear.
Now, these ghosts are typically of famous people in period clothing that seem to appear in relevant locations to that historical character. The main one being, I say the main one. This one, she's very prolific, is this girl, is all I can say. Prolific in life, prolific in death. What can you say? It's good old Anne Boleyn. Now, she's reportedly seen in several locations around the UK.
Yeah.
on different
Well,
you know, different dates, different times. She's all sorts. She's all over the place,
Is,
basically.
isn't that one at the Tower of London?
Yeah, she's said to be seen at the Tower of London.
Yeah, and incidentally, I've written a blog about the Tower of London.
Oh my
Yeah.
god! Oh my god! Have you?
Yeah, you can go and have a read of it. It's on the website, which is www.paranormalconcept.com.
Is it?
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is absolutely.
Go
Go over
check
and
it
check it out.
Second plug of the day, everybody. Now, she was beheaded on Tower Green on the 19th of May in 1536, and she has been seen at the tower.
Ooh. Yes, with her head tucked underneath her arm, I believe. There was a song, I think, many years ago.
I don't actually believe that bit's true. I believe it's just a bit of a folklore tale that's sort of.
Well, good song.
It might be a good song, but you know.
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah, that is.
I think you should write a blog on that one.
Tale, yeah, but yeah, I could do. I mean, I don't know where to post it though. Oh, yes, I do. www.paranormalconcept.com. Okay,
Oh my God, they're getting good at this like promotion malarkey, aren't they? Anyway, the most spectacular story relating good old Anne is actually at the Tower of London. Now, he saw a light flickering in the Chapel Royale one night. No, it's the Chapel Royal, not Royale. I mean, James Bond over here.
it's not a casino, yeah.
It's the Casino Royale one night. No, it was the Chapel Royal one night. He climbed up a ladder to look through the window, and he saw a procession of knights and ladies dressed in costume pacing through the chapel. And their leader couldn't see her face, but he said she resembled Anne Boleyn in portraits he'd seen, but he didn't see her face. So I'm kind of like a bit confused by that point. Could have been anybody, basically, but he put it down to Anne Boleyn. She's also
Maybe
supposed
it's Henry VIII on the weekend.
Maybe. She's also supposed to walk from the Queen's house to the Chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. There's Kerry's pronunciations again.
Yeah, vernacular, yeah, I would call that vernacular.
Where her grave is under the altar.
All right.
Right? And a soldier on duty near the lieutenant's lodgings, these are all in the Tower of London, was supposed to have challenged a white figure and didn't get response, so he bayoneted the figure, and then it just went straight through and didn't touch anything, and he was a bit scared really about that.
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah, that would.
that particular site is in my blog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's several at the Tower of London itself. Now, she's also supposed to be at Hever Castle. My favourite, I will give a shout out to Hever Castle. It's beautiful place to go and visit. It's one of my favourite places to go and visit. It's not that far from me. I'm very lucky that it's within travelling distance to go and visit Hever Castle. It is absolutely beautiful, and it has a whole history regardless of the link to Anne Boleyn. But every Christmas she is supposed to appear at Hever Castle, and she's supposed to manifest beneath a great oak. She's always a manifestation, is Anne?
Yes, I sort of gathered that as well. But isn't she at Windsor Castle as well?
Yep, she's supposed to stand at the window of the Dean's Cloister at Windsor Castle.
We're going to go there on a road trip.
We are.
Well, we have promised ourselves, haven't we?
Yeah. I've written to the Queen and just asked if she don't mind us popping in for tea.
Good.
Oh,
good.
good.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just waiting for my reply, and then we'll arrange that and go and see Her Majesty, and we'll have a word with Anne Boleyn while we're there if she's around at the time.
Well, she'll probably come back with the response of, yes, no problem, Paul, but let's just wait and see when we're allowed to.
Oh yeah, of course. We've got to wait till this lockdown's lifted, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, it'd be nice to go and have a natter with her.
Mm-hmm. It would be.
I bet she's really bored being isolated with Philip.
Oh. Anyway, she is also supposed to, not the Queen, this is Anne Boleyn, sorry, back to Anne. Hampton Court Palace, she's supposed to haunt as well. She's been allegedly seen wearing a blue or a black dress. Now, this is where the story goes. Sometimes she's seen headless. It's actually Hampton Court Palace, not the Tower of London.
Oh,
Not
okay.
always, though. She's been seen with or without. If you know what I mean. She's always got a head. It's just whether she's carrying it or not.
Isn't there another location near to you, Kerry, that has Anne Boleyn?
Rochford
Space.
Hall, yeah. Rochford Hall
Yeah.
in Essex. It's a manor house. I believe it's a golf course now.
I think
And
it
the
is,
manor
yeah.
house is actually like the golf club house. Used to be investigated, but I don't think it is anymore.
I don't know. I've not heard for a while. It's one of those locations that were about for a while and then just dropped, like Highlands House, for example.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
don't hear much about that place anymore,
no.
do you? Yeah.
So whether or not they sort of went through a little spat of allowing investigations in and then decided to stop, I don't know. But Rochford Hall, anyway, she's supposed to be there. Now, this is the place where King Henry VIII first saw Anne Boleyn.
Mm.
Right. Well, meta, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, he
Oh,
first
right,
cast
yeah.
his eyes upon her. And then, well, the whole history came out of that, didn't it? My
I
God.
wonder if that's how the Essex girl got their reputation.
I don't know.
And if that
But
wasn't enough, she's also supposed to be at oh, I can't even say it. Blickling Hall.
Blinkley Hall, yes.
Yeah, which is in Norfolk. And
Right.
this is a headless spectre arriving. And she apparently arrives in a phantom carriage drawn by a headless coachman and they're all headless, basically. So you've got this
Right.
carriage with 4 horses, a coachman and her, but none of them have got heads.
Oh, right.
Now, that's actually
That's-
supposed to be a reoccurring haunting. That's actually
Yeah.
supposed to happen on her. This is what I mean. With Anne Boleyn, you've got like so many things that are supposed to have happened on the anniversary of her execution. You know what I mean? In lots of different places. Now, is this a question of misidentification? So people are seeing something, they put it down to the famous person link when it isn't. It could be anybody.
I
Yeah.
think these sort of anecdotes will be added on after the event. I should imagine if somebody they would report seeing something unusual, not be too descriptive about it, and as the story is connected, it's automatically assumed it is that. You know, and perhaps they're embellished by outside influences once someone reports seeing something.
Possibly. Or is it because it raises the profile? You know what I mean? It's another, if you go visit Rochford Hall, for example, you know what I mean? It's like, at
Yeah.
the time, it's like the haunting of Anne Boleyn at Rochford Hall. It could be an evolution through from the paranormal community because there is that history there. And
Yes.
there is maybe activity there. They attribute it to the most famous person to give it a more sensationalized lure, as it were.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Maybe.
if you were to see an apparition with no head, I mean, it could be anyone.
Exactly. All you would really know would be roughly the period because of what they're
Yes.
wearing, if they're wearing, what they're wearing.
Yeah,
If it's Tudor costume, you sort of make an educated guess, it's Tudor period. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's a lady.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
that kind of would be it, I would think.
that would be it. Even if it had a head, unless you're very, very sort of savvy and know your history and stuff and what she looked like. Yeah, I'm not a great sort of fan of when hauntings are attributed to certain individuals. Never have been. I've often of the thought that it could be anyone. I'm not disputing that something is going on, but to a certain individual, no, I don't think. I think that's too.
It does make
specific.
it suspicious when people, say, "Oh yeah, we've got a spirit," but then it's of someone famous. It's like, well, it could be anybody.
Yeah. I think the other thing you need to bear in mind is like a lot of the historical figures are portraits, all portraits of what was drawn, and it was well known that the painters would actually be very kind, shall we say,
Oh yes.
and there are historical references to people being caught out. I think even Henry VIII, one of his wives, he was sent a portrait. And he agreed to marry her on the portrait, but when she arrived, he was like,
Yeah.
"What? That is not what you sent me. That is pure catfishing."
They did
That
have
was-
live, and it isn't there one of I can't remember. It was like a king or someone else that was beheaded, and then they realised they haven't actually got a portrait of them,
Yes,
So
that was
they
the,
literally sat the guy down and put his head back and let the
yes, I've
painter.
actually seen that portrait. It's the portrait of the Duke of Monmouth,
That's
who
it.
was
Yeah.
who was the illegitimate son of Charles II, who launched a rebellion in the West Country, and
Yeah, I know.
it failed.
Can
But
you imagine it?
he did look a bit pale.
He
I
put his
must
head
admit.
back on his body, or maybe not on a
Yeah.
body. Maybe they just gave him the head. Who knows? And went, see what you can do with that, because we've
Yeah.
got to get a portrait while he was alive.
But Henry VIII, for instance, that was with Anne of Cleves, I believe, his fourth wife, and he sent Holbein over to Flanders, well, which is now modern day Holland, to actually capture her likeness, because back then marriages were arranged; it was all a done deal. So but then she turned up the night before the wedding. Henry dressed in disguise and went into her bedchamber just to have a quick look-see, and was quite shocked. And from then on, she was known in court as the Flanders Mare.
Oh, poor lady. But it just goes to show that maybe the portraits we have of these people are not necessarily. So you can go, oh,
Yeah.
it looked like Anne Boleyn because I've seen a portrait of her, so I know what she looks like. She may not have been that close to the portrait to what we think.
Exactly.
I actually have seen portraits of Anne Boleyn, and I actually thought, how the hell did she capture a king's eye with that look? I was expecting something a lot prettier. No disrespect to
Well,
Anne Boleyn, sorry.
You can imagine what it's like. So back in the day, you would commission an artist to come do a portrait, and then and they are sort of going to use the sort of the historical equivalent of a Photoshop of their time.
Yeah. That's putting it nicely at times. Right. We need to put that box away and move on to the next one.
Oh, that's right. That's at the bottom. That's fine.
Okay, so we're going on to haunted items. Your favourite topic, Paul?
Oh, I know. And incidentally, on a serious note, we have got a book out as well, and I'm sure there's lots of blogs in there about haunted items, which is available on Amazon. It's called the Book of Parasearch.
There you go, everybody.
Yeah. So get the book, especially in lockdown, because obviously you might need something to do or read, especially if you're on your paranormal fix. There's lots of stuff in there.
And I do believe on our website is www.paranormalconcept.com. You've got a link to actually go and purchase this book.
Absolutely, there is. Yep, and it's available Amazon worldwide, all over the place,
Sorry,
except Australia apparently.
Well, we don't know why poor old Australia got left out of the mix there. But anyway, haunted items. It's a controversial topic. Go on eBay. You can buy a plethora of haunted dolls or haunted teddy bears or haunted objects. There are museums popping up all over the place, and people put great stock in the fact that they may possibly own a haunted item.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I think out of all those, there's 3 that I know of in the UK. There's probably a few more as well that I don't know of. But out of those 3, there's only one that actually doesn't claim that they're haunted objects, and it's just a case of if you pick something up from it, you can experiment with it, and you're free to touch and move the items and use them for experiments and stuff. The other 2 museums are not too keen on you doing that, but there's something for everybody in those places.
There is. I'm not criticising them because this actually leads us down.
Interested.
This actually leads us down into something that's well known in the field, and this is something that's actually quite spiritual and about energy exchange, and it's called psychometry.
Yeah. Right.
Now, this has actually been looked at quite extensively. In fact, quite a long time ago as well. I said I will point my listeners in the direction of a gentleman called William Denton.
Okay.
Oh, Will. Yeah, I know Will.
Yeah, good old Will.
Yeah.
Now, he did experiments with, basically, he would get objects like rocks or stones or fossils or things like that, wrap them in paper, and then pass them on to whoever was around. And he mainly used his sister at this time. He didn't tell her what was in these packages and ask her to tell him what impressions, if any, she got.
Right, and how did she What were her results of this sort of experiment, I suppose you can call it?
Very interesting.
Oh, okay.
Very interesting indeed. Even down to a piece of rock that had some tiny fossils of shells in it, like little ammonites in it. And she was saying, oh, I'm seeing lots of shells and things like that. So she was very accurate in regards to what
So
energy.
basically, he wrapped these objects up, and she had to guess what was inside.
Yeah, or say like what impressions she was getting. Now she wasn't a medium, she wasn't a trained medium or anything like that. It was just purely an experiment. He also did this with letters as well to see if they could pick up the personality of the people or the person that was writing the letter, and they had some great accurate results from that too, which led him down to the understanding, is that the right word? Or the theory that objects maintain energy, whether it's natural energy from like a piece of rock or something that you pick up from a beach or something, to an object that's loved dearly or written, and you've transferred some of your own energy into that object.
Right, I see.
So there are studies done on this.
But wouldn't you feel that could also, playing devil's advocate, that could also work the other way round? It's the recipient, the person that's handling the object, they are sort of seeing or psychically sort of seeing what the object is or what it may be, as opposed from the object giving off the energy. I mean, it's more of a perception from the individual of what the object is.
It could be either or, though, couldn't it?
Yeah,
Well, you
because
mean
I'm
like
thinking of, because this sounds very much like the forerunner to like Xena cards, doesn't it?
I was going to say, like, when you give someone a present at Christmas and it's shaped in a wine bottle, it's most often or not a wine bottle.
But when you say if you had a rock and you wrapped it, you wouldn't be able to then go, oh, I'm sensing seashells and blah, 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 blah. You're not feeling what's inside it. You're just holding it. There is a difference. And working with crystals myself, crystals do have different energy. They do feel different. Mm-hmm. And I do know that they did an experiment with some students as well, whether or not they could tell what was metal and what wasn't metal between parcels. So they're wrapped, then they're all muddled up. And then to cut out the telepathy link as well, they would wrap them up, mix them all up. So the parcel that you're giving to the person to try and work out what it is without seeing it, the person who gave it to them didn't know what it was either. Because that was one of the criticisms. When we go back to critical thinking, one of the criticisms was, well, you know what's in that parcel you've just given us. So she could be picking it up from you, not from the item. So they did it by mixing it all up and then no one knowing what was in the parcel until it got unwrapped.
I think it's an experiment that we could do.
Easily.
Well,
It
certainly is. I mean, especially the access to some of the rocks and minerals we've got. I mean, thanks to Kerry. But don't you find it interesting, I mean, playing devil's advocate again, that he conducted this experiment with his sister, who would have some sort of knowledge of what her brother's into, what sort of stuff he has around and stuff like that? Did he carry out this experiment on a broader sort of test subjects and stuff?
Oh yeah, it went on. That's just where it started.
Right.
It led the thought pattern.
Do you believe then that objects can be haunted?
I don't think they can be haunted. I think they can hold energy, and I think there's a very different distinction between the two. I don't believe.
That's sort of where I was. My thought process had gone, because it's more energy transference.
Yeah.
So where this person's picked up the rock in the parcel, they're feeling for that energy, and even if that rock belonged to someone else, especially in the case of the letters, you could pick up the energy of the person that wrote it. So by that logic, you pick up an item in one of these museums and you're picking up on the energy of the person that had it previously.
It's a possibility.
So as such, it's almost like you're feeling the person that owned it, and that's where you get the psychic link, and then maybe that could bring forward the spirit.
I can see what you're sort of saying there, Paul. Yeah. But is there some way? Is this energy, can it connect or link itself or attach itself to the object? I think this is where haunted items this is the main theory behind
See,
the
when I've gone
haunted
to
item.
medium nights and stuff, they've said, like, if you want to speak to someone, just, think about them and they'll come to you. So if it's like a family member, you could just think of some happy memories or whatever, and sometimes, they might make themselves known that they're around you at that time, or it could just happen naturally throughout the day anyway. So I'm just thinking, if you're picking up energy from an object of someone else, because you've got the energy thoughts in your mind, you could essentially bring that person to you. So it could also attract.
Yeah, no, I understand what
So
you're
it's
saying.
not. So the object's not haunted as such. It's
No.
just got the energy impression,
Yeah.
and that in its own right brings the spirit forward. If that makes sense.
Possibly. I mean, we don't know. We don't know yet. It's just
No.
it's a preliminary experiment that you can do. It's an interesting experiment that's quite simple that you can do without it having to be a haunted doll or something. I mean, there are
Yeah.
famous objects around the world. I mean, Annabelle being, the main one. Robert the doll, that's another famous one. And they've not just got like the mythology of the case itself, but they've actually got, the whole mythology afterwards once it's in the museum.
I think
So is
I
it a
think that is
Phillips
sort of
experiment
quite
type of
sexist.
thing? But why is it sexist?
Because it always happens to be dolls. You never hear of a haunted action man, do you?
No, but Robert the
I
doll
didn't
is a
play
boy
with dolls when
doll.
Well, it's not really, is
A
it?
doll. It doesn't. It's not.
It's a
It's not
doll, isn't it?
gendered.
Girls play with dolls, boys don't. They play with
Oh,
action
now
men.
that's sexist.
Oh dear.
If we're going to go down that route, Ulrich, we so need to let him out, Richard. Honestly.
Oh, you are
God.
going out this afternoon.
He is going
Take the
out.
risk.
Yeah, he's going to go for a walk to get some fresh air and lift this
I've got fresh air. I've got the window.
I mean,
It looks like a horrible day out there.
these famous cases, of these haunted dolls or these haunted objects, you know what I mean? It's a focus at the moment. It's a very fashionista focus on the paranormal. But when you look back onto certain experiments that have been done, it lead you down into an interesting thought pattern. You know what I mean?
Well,
When
that's
you
it.
do
I
look
think,
into
because
experiments.
obviously you've got the energy transference onto the objects, and it does somehow elicit activity for some people. And I think there's a lot of teams out there then now that try to recreate it as opposed to investigate it properly. And I think that's where the popularity comes, because they people want experiences, so they go out, they do this experiment because they know it works, and they just keep recreating it. They don't actually investigate it.
Well, yeah, this is sort of something we've touched upon before, sort of like investigating. There's a very sort of grey area now within the paranormal whether people go for the experience, which there's nothing wrong with that, or to investigate. But I do have a sort of a bit of a sort of thing about, if you to investigate is a lot more broader sort of term.
Yeah, I do.
To
I mean,
experience.
I think this is what bugs me about the paranormal. To be fair, I mean, someone, again, as you said, there's nothing wrong with it at all. But if they want the experience, then call themselves ghost hunters.
Well,
But you
yeah,
don't
they
get
should.
that.
call
But then
it
there's
as such.
controversy over the interpretation of hunter as well. So it's only a word to describe
Yeah, I mean, they're
going
hunting
out.
out the experience. That's what they're doing, but there are people out there that do essentially just go for the thrill and the experience.
Yeah.
And they call themselves investigators, and it's like, yeah, but you're not investigating anything.
Well,
Yeah.
there we go. That's a whole different topic. I think.
absolutely.
I do
We'll
think
do
that's a
a
whole
whole
different
show on
topic.
that
That's
or
a whole
something.
different show. But going back to haunted objects, it is a very interesting when you actually look at it. I think you could look at it from several angles. I think you could look at it as being aware that who knows the information about the object being in the room. Could be telepathic transference. It could be energy that somehow the object manages to have around it, that possibly may call a spirit to it because you're tuning into that energy signature. Who knows? It could be that all you're doing is reading the energy, doesn't attract a spirit at all, but you're reading the history, as in picking up the history spiritually, like mediumistically wise type thing. It could be that. It could be, oh God, I mean, it's just endless when you look at it.
I like to, I like, and I would even go as far as to say, you get mediums when they sort of read people, you get something as cold reading. I believe with objects, they're very visual, and a lot of people will sort of come to conclusions and assumptions just by looking at the object, and particularly if it's a doll. And they, and more than likely, you are going to sort of say you're going to pick up, a child playing with the doll or something to me because you got the prompt there.
I understand what you're saying on that. You can make assumptions on the object from the from the thing, but
the type of person that may have owned it and stuff.
But you're discounting the fact if you walk into a room of allegedly go to a museum and they've all got some form of history. Yeah, there's only a certain amount of assumptions you can make on that, and you may only be drawn to one or two items. What is it that's drawing you to that item? To then read on.
I get that.
Not the fact that you may necessarily know all about the history of, the clown doll in the corner. You might not know any history on it. It might just be the one thing in the room that you're drawn to, and everyone goes, oh, it's really strange because nobody else gets drawn to that. They all get drawn to the rocking chair. Who knows? Do you know what I mean? That's the interesting part for me. It's like what bits, why you get drawn to it, and then what you get through it.
Yeah.
If you didn't know it and they don't know it, then you can't sit there and say you're wrong. You know what I mean?
I must admit, I did actually do an experiment in front of a very famous haunted doll here in the UK, and it was a basic dowsing experiment, and the information I came up with was not conducive with a doll. It was a male I actually came up with, and when I actually spoke to the owners of the doll, they were actually quite sort of surprised because they have had sort of several people come back to them with that sort of an information. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
I think you might get sort of attracted to the doll via the vibrations. If you work on a spiritual level anyway, you vibrate at a certain level. So maybe it's a case of that energy is on the same level, so that draws you to that object, or it works in your specific range of vibration. Maybe.
It's fascinating when you actually look at, as I say, it's very controversial and people can be very critical of it. I mean, I personally wouldn't trust a haunted doll bought on eBay personally. But that doesn't mean to say people haven't had experiences with that object and they just want to get rid of it. But it does seem very fashionista at the moment. And so I'd say buyer beware.
Due diligence, isn't it? Yeah,
true
buyer
diligence.
beware.
Yeah, and just, say there are museums and stuff around that you can go and experiment this. And you can do this with stuff in your own home. I've got some rocks that people have gifted me. I could sit there and play with those and see what I got. But rocks are a bit difficult because it's finding where they came from originally. It's like, at least with an object, you've got half a battle won because you can possibly trace it. But anyway, moving on, because we're running out of time, believe it or not, lads. We've got to cover this one, because this one, again, hugely controversial in the paranormal field. And a lot of it's down to belief system, which is demonic hauntings.
Oh, you got to love demonic haunting, haven't you?
Now, this has been made very, should we say, popular by TV, I would say. It's hashtag it's a demon. And he said, I'm a demon then. Hashtag it's a demon is spouted quite a lot in the paranormal field in a mock of certain television shows that are out there. But it doesn't change the fact that there is a whole mythology and folklore regarding demons themselves. The origin of the word is actually Greek. Demon doesn't actually mean nasty, evil, Satan-loving entity. It's actually just a general term for any form of supernatural deity.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. But in this day and age, that meaning has transferred into a bad, nasty, malevolent, non-human, elemental kind of entity that wreaks havoc, attaches to you, sucks all your energy, makes you ill, and is generally nasty, quite frankly.
Yes.
Yeah? Do we go with...
Yeah, I'll go with that, yeah. I think of all the sort of like hauntings and stuff, the demonic sort of phenomenon we are actually experiencing at the moment. I believe this is sort of a classic example of it being driven by popular culture.
So I think that demons, at face value, are just a religious icon that help the church convince people to go to church.
The same as angels and demons. It's like the opposite sides of the
Yeah.
coin, isn't it? Like God and Satan, like black and white.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
mean, these days a lot of people get like nasty, malicious spirits in their home, and they just go, "Oh yeah, it's a demon." Well,
Yeah.
it could just be a spirit that was very easy to annoy in life,
Or not. It could be somebody that you've done something in the home they just don't like because it's their home.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're showing their unhappiness with that, and all of a sudden they're a demon. Well, that's going to
Yeah.
annoy them even more, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, yeah, that film we mentioned earlier, The Others. Um, that's a prime example because neither side were bad or evil. It was just the fact that when they shut the curtains, didn't they keep opening the curtains, and it
Yeah.
was interfering with the young boy that lived there because he had a skin condition, and it annoyed the mother, and she kept shutting the curtains again, and it turned out that they were the spirits anyway, and it's like, that these people were just annoying the spirits just by opening the curtains. So, yeah, I mean, from their aspect, I suppose they could have just turned around and said, "Well, yeah, okay, they're angry spirits. They must be demons," and they're not.
I'm often wondering the more sort of plausible cases that out there that have been put down to demonic sort of possession and stuff like that, whether this is a very advanced sort of state of poltergeist activity.
Yeah, with a little bit extra,
Yeah.
I
good
do.
measure.
I see.
The
I
more
have to say, my belief system on this is that other forms of energy entity do exist. Believe that. I personally believe that's my personal belief system. I do believe that it's not just humans. You know what I mean? There are other energy entities that exist. What they are, where they come from, I don't know. I've looked into lots of different mythology about this, and I do have that belief system. It goes across culture. You've only got to look at the jinn, you know what I mean, and the entities like that people talk about. And it goes that every culture has their own form of entity, energy form entity, we'll call them. I think in the West, we've labelled them demon purely and simply because of, like you say, modern culture and through religious culture as well. When you look at certain possessions, which are all put down to demons, I think that you have to be very, very careful in regards to that because of a lot of psychological illnesses will manifest in this kind of way, depending on the environmental influences that person has been through. I think you have to be very careful of that. But having been through a very strange experience myself, and that's all I can say, it was a strange experience, incredibly coincidental, the way things happened. Belief system, maybe there is no such thing as coincidences. When you look at the chain of events of that, it seems incredibly weird if it wasn't some form of entity attachment. But I'm very biased because I'm looking at that personally and it was my experience. It's very difficult to call, and it's very difficult to diagnose mental illness, certain mental illnesses. There's a lot of them. You'd have to be a really knowledgeable psychologist for some of them because they're quite rare. So before you go straight into the demonic haunting or demonic possession, you would have to really, really be careful. Having said that, I do have a belief system that there are elementals and stuff, and doing the work that I do, I am kind of inviting them in with some of the work we do. Trying to connect to these.
Well, that's it. I mean,
these
for me,
entities.
an elemental isn't a dark, evil spirit.
No,
at
it
all.
isn't. No, not at all.
It's just a spirit that exists or an energy that exists, and it's neither good or bad.
Yeah.
But I think if if you're the type of person to be quite negative and you keep putting negativity out there, then it almost feeds off of that.
Yeah.
So, it could be just having an impact on that particular energy in the spirit that you get negativity back.
Manage your expectations.
Exactly. Where if you're a positive person, you put positive stuff out. It tends to, again, feed off of that, but sort of leaves you alone, does its own thing, and
Well, I think
it's
sort
quite
of
pleasant.
since I've been introduced to like elementals and stuff, it's something I do actually sort of like believe in now, and and their sort of like behavioural traits is because they will appear as you want them to appear,
Yeah.
or believe they will appear, and this could possibly be tied into your psychological state as well when you sort of within the presence of these elementals. Are they taking more from you than just sort of like and how they appear physically to you?
It's very much like going down that thought train. It's very much like intention setting. You have to be incredibly honest with yourself about your intentions for doing any form of energy work, because your intention is going to be, your energy is going to be focused in that intention. And if you've got one bit of bad or horrible intention behind it, or self gratification in there, you've got to be very, very careful. I mean, we say quite often in the spiritual field, careful what you ask for, because you're probably going to get it, and if it will manifest in a way that you may not expect it to. And a lot of that has come from your very deep intention. So everyone goes, oh yeah, just think what you want and it'll happen. But you've got it's a lot more work than that. The people, I think, it's one of my little bugbears in the new age pagan-y world. It's very airy-fairy and unicorns and glitter. It's a lot deeper than that. It's very a lot of being self-aware and knowing yourself. And when we say know yourself, it's deeply knowing yourself. It's a lot of inner work that people don't realise that they have to do. And, it's one of those easy things to say, but not so easy to do. And a lot of people are after the quick click fix. I'll just say it'll happen, manifest. I'll do my vision board and it'll happen, because that's how it works. And that's not how it works, people. It's a lot.
Feathers will turn up on your doorstep and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
but
it's very fluffy.
But
it's a
knowing
very fluffy
what I
perspective.
know now, or sort of have learned, spiritually and sort of like in occult work, it's preparation. I mean, that is probably 90% of the work, isn't it? And this is where you get, sort of like to do a ritual or to do a sort of like a working or stuff. I mean, it's 90% and preparation for it.
Yeah. And everyone goes, oh, I've got my salt circle, I'll be safe. Okay, well, maybe do a salt circle that you want to get the entity into, so you've got control over it.
Yeah.
If you're going to conjure. If you're going into that level of work, then that's what you need to be doing. And people go, oh, but I've got my salt circle, I'm fine. Oh. It's not, that's not as easy as it is.
Does the salt circle actually work?
Yeah.
Why? How?
Because, first of all, you've got the element itself.
Yeah.
But then also
I know it's a natural element. So,
we talk about preparation. Yeah, so part of that preparation is creating a space that you believe is safe.
Okay, so again, it's more mind controlled.
No, there are other reasons you would use salt for its own elemental purposes. Look into elemental
because it is
purposes.
a crystal, isn't it?
Exactly.
A case of, because you believe it works, it works.
Well, it is a crystal in its own right, salt, and whatever sort of properties they are believed to hold. Yeah.
One thing's for sure: whatever your belief system is going into some form of working, whether or not there's a physical reason why it works, or whether or not it's a mental reason why it works, which is where Paul's going. It's just your belief system. Don't worry about it. Do you know what I mean? Well, whatever way it is, it's about the preparation of mindset. Whenever you go into and this is deep occult working, whenever you go into that, you have to go into it with this very specific preparation to set your mindset into that, because what you're dealing with is energy and forces that you are trying to conjure. Yeah? From that, you don't know what you're going to get. you can try and conjure something. Something not, a lot of times nothing happens, but a lot of times it does happen too. So if you're
Yeah.
prepared in every aspect of that working, if you're prepared for whatever it is you're going to get, yeah, I'm going through a
Yeah.
process of work at the moment, and it's very intense and takes a lot of concentration, and that's not something you gain by just going, "Right, I'm going to do this working today, I'll just sit down and do it." It's a preparation. It's
Yeah.
it's a build up to the
Oh,
main
I would-
article. It's going to take me months, possibly even a year or two, to get to the end
Yeah.
of this,
Yeah.
because
I mean,
it's not a
would
5 minute
generally-
fix.
it is generally an interest for me why the salt would work. It's the same thing with the glass, because I think going back to like the haunted doll, you had like wasn't it a glass jar over Annabelle? The
Yeah,
doll?
she's in a glass cabinet, isn't she?
What is it in that glass that makes that spirit confined to inside the glass?
I can't answer that.
Exactly, and it doesn't change the composition of the table either. So if there is something in the glass that the spirit can't get, makes the spirit not be able to escape, why doesn't it just drop down and go underneath the table?
Well, particularly when you think about, we talk about ghosts passing through walls and stuff, you
Yeah.
think that they're not encompassed by material things on earth. But like I say, I can't answer that question for you. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I'm not obviously I'm not taking a mick or anything like that or anything like that.
No,
It's just
no,
a
it is.
gen-
It's
No.
a genuine
it's just
inquiry,
wondering
isn't it?
why it works.
Yeah, for me,
Yeah.
it's all part of when I do a ritual or something like that in regards to the salt circle and stuff like that. It's about prep. It's about
Yeah.
it's about mindset preparation and putting myself into your sacred space. I suppose some people would class it as. Some people have altars. Like the Wiccan community. They'll have an altar, and that is their sacred space. You don't have to have a whole room, even just an altar area. When you step into that space, becomes your altar area. That's your sacred area where you're doing your
Yeah.
working. Stepping into that steps into
Yeah.
that mindset of, this is where I'm going to do my work. This is what I'm going to do with energy today. This is my worship too, because you don't just do part of it isn't just about conjuring and doing spell works. It's a lot of worship as well, like to the nature and various
Yeah.
times of the year, like Beltane and Stara and stuff like that. You're actually sitting, you're setting a form of worship and ritual around a festival to thank the elementals, the spirits, the sprites, the imps, the fairies, the this, the that. Do you know what I mean? Whatever it is that your belief system holds. So it is part of that. But I do think in regards to demons, going back to demons, that they, even when you look at Phalor, they appear as you expect them to appear.
Yeah.
Demons
And
appear as you expect them to appear. Going back to the true word of demon, not bad Satan demon, we're talking about an entity demon. So if you're expecting bad, crappy, horrible, disfigured, burning eyes kind of entity, chances are that's what you're going to get. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be surprised when you get it.
Yeah. And also, if you are in the belief system that it is a human spirit that you're encountering at an investigation or, in your whatever it is that you're out there doing, there are bad people.
Yeah.
There are good people. Don't if they're doing something that may be like you said at the top of the show, if they're doing something that feels bad, like slamming a door, it could be that they're really annoyed because you stepped into their area and they're like, who the hell are all these people?
Yeah.
Or if you're being abusive, I mean, some teams go in there and are very provocative in their language. They don't treat them like that you would another human being. I would not walk into a pub full of people and go, oi, who's going to talk to me then? If you've got the balls, come and talk to me. You wouldn't do that in life. Why on earth would you do that on a paranormal investigation?
I'm going to do that now.
Because,
and
and a door slams. It's surprising.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Oh, I see. You're big enough to slam a door, but you're not big enough to talk to me. Why would I want to talk to you if you're talking to me like that? It depends on, you've got to be aware of all this. And actually,
Absolutely.
if it is actually a real true life kicking and screaming demon from hell, would you want to talk to a demon from hell like that? You'd be like, I'm backing away from the big scary demon. You know what I mean? So people give it a lot of bravado when encountering, and I'm going to use the term spirit in regards to entity, you know, without actually, first of all, being self-aware and knowing their intentions and what they're doing there. You know, it's a lot more work than people are prepared to necessarily put in. It's all a jolly, going out on a paranormal investigation with my mates. We're going to get some activity, we're going to record it, we're going to put it on YouTube, and that's the end of it. It's not, you have to be very careful, you're playing with energy. Sorry, I went on a little soapbox moment there, didn't I?
Right, we're
Good on
taking
you,
that
Bill.
soapbox away from you. Have we got enough time to go through this next box?
We've got about a minute.
Okay.
Put that box away.
Well, I'll put your soapbox away, and I'll leave that box in the shadows for the next show.
Well, very much so, because there are other forms of haunting that we just haven't been able to cover. There's crisis ghosts, and there's, you know, the shadow man,
shadows,
shadow creatures, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's lots of other things, but I think we've demonstrated that throughout this little types of haunting show that you can't always put them in a box. They cross over quite a lot, and you actually have to look deeper and not just take things on face value, and know yourself when you're investigating as well. What are you expecting to see, and what aren't you expecting to see? And sometimes it could be that you see what you're expecting. And on that note, my beautiful boys, sorry, I took up the time with
Well
my
done,
soapbox
girl.
moment. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. It killed a few minutes, didn't it?
Anyway, next week, join us. We have got the lovely John Fraser, who has written a book all about poltergeist. So we're actually going to focus a bit more on that next week. On that note, thank you for joining us. We're exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. So say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.